Here to dig a little deeper into these troubling developments is General Michael Hayden, former CIA and NSA director, also a principal from the Chertoff Group. General Hayden, it's always great to get your perspective on these matters.
Good morning, John.
All right, so let's talk about these claims coming from the State Department and the Pentagon yesterday. A lot of folks might be asking, why did we not hear this type of information sooner?
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but it's certainly part of a pattern, isn't it? You almost had the human instinct after the Malaysian airliner went down that everyone would have taken a pause, but clearly the Russians haven't. They continue to double down with direct support and delivering of arms and increasingly heavier arms to the Ukrainians. I am out here in Aspen with Marty Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and I think his comments yesterday are spot on. Putin will lose control over the surrogates he continues to arm. I think he got that point, John, about a month or two ago when the riots in Odessa left 40 people dead. He kind of got a little more cautious in his rhetoric, reduced his footprint along the Ukrainian border, but then the Ukrainian army started a pretty successful offensive against the separatists. And I think Putin or somebody in Russia panicked and doubled down with heavier equipment to their surrogates on the other side of the border. And we've seen how well that's gone.
Yeah.
One of the first acts was that downing of the airliner.
Yeah, and Putin panicking is a situation that scares a lot of folks. Of course, the other scenarios are fearful as well. They're full of concerns. Now, of course, Russia has been in the spotlight for its involvement in the shoot-down of the Malaysian passenger jet, of course, but Russians and their deputy defensemen are strongly denying any involvement, saying the United Nations has no proof to back up their accusations. Here's a full screen that we can put up on the screen of one of those specific statements. Quote, "It was declared that data collected by the U.S. technical intelligence and satellite photographs prove that the rocket was launched from territory controlled by the rebels. Where is the data? Why is it not presented to the public?" That's what the Russians are saying. We've heard the story of the Russian state media trying to push their own narrative on this. General Hayden, do you think in places outside of Russia, is that type of storyline gaining any traction?
I certainly hope not, and frankly, it's so absurd that I think only a radical fringe would begin to digest it. 9/11 truthers, those kinds of folks would be the kind that would embrace that kind of so-called data. And so, look, it's very clear. We're trying to treat the crash site as a crime scene, and we want forensics experts to go in, and I get all that. And in one sense, it is a crime scene. But in another sense, John, it's a political act. The Russians have made a conscious decision to use their armed forces to overturn the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. That's an incredibly big deal. As bad as the airliner downing is, this is something that just cannot pass. And the intelligence that what I just told you is true is overwhelming. We know what happened last Thursday with the airliner. We know about the indirect fire attacks coming from Russia. We know about the delivery of other heavy equipment to Ukrainian separatists. And so the West, the United States, our European allies, have got to look at this in the geopolitical and strategic context, not just in the criminal context.
And we also know now a little bit more about why Victoria Nuland from the State Department used such colorful language at the onset of this crisis about trying to spur Europe into action here. But, General, I also wanted to get your take because the Russian propaganda front, they're still trying to push, again, that narrative we just spoke about, and they're also bringing up the Iraq War as a reason why the global community should not believe the United States. I wanted to get your take on that as well.
Sure. We've got the weapons of mass destruction wrong. We thought the Iraqis had that kind of program. So did the Russians, so did the English, so did the French. All global intelligence agencies had come broadly to the same conclusion. We were wrong, they were wrong. We're not wrong here. I think it is so painfully obvious what happened. And frankly, John, we have the evidence. When that Luke surface-to-air missile system lit up, you are going to detect three different kinds of radar signals. You're going to get the tracking radar on the airliner. You're going to get the tracking radar on the missile once it's launched, and then you're going to get a guidance signal to the missile telling it to brake left, brake right, go up, go down, and so on. And that'll constitute very powerful evidence, not just of the act, but of the location. And then we would detect, almost certainly, the explosion of the airliner because of the heat created. And John, and this is most important, those systems are sensitive enough, they would have detected the heat plume of the missile itself.
So there's plenty of information that we expect to get in on this, General. And I want to talk about maybe why the president and the administration is slow-rolling this in relation to Europe in a second. But I also wanted to get your take yesterday because we had Marco Rubio, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, here on America's Forum yesterday. He weighed in on the situation in Ukraine and the relationship between Russia and the Malaysia plane crash here. Let's take a listen to Senator Rubio, and I'll get your take on the other side.
Certainly should have been more forceful in the initial stages and called it for what it is. Now, since then, I think the White House has become more aggressive about its point. And what I think would be helpful now is to declassify as much of the evidence as possible to show it to the world so the world can see how Russia has a direct role to play in the murder of almost 300 innocent people that were on that Malaysian airliner.
And all right, so General, that information that Rubio is talking about, you say it exists. You gave us some specific examples. When do you expect to hear the administration or the State Department start putting that out there, like as what we saw in the run-up to the first Iraq War, specific pictures, evidence in a very public way that can kind of change or push back against the Russian surreal narrative?
Yeah, John is always reluctant in my own community to put sources and methods at risk. But frankly, I'm more with the senator here right now than I am with my old folks in the intelligence community. I think we've got the data. I don't think it would put a great deal at risk if we put a significant fraction of that data out there, just to prove the point. Now, John, I don't think the Russian narrative gains much traction. I think what we need to do is to force the Europeans to face the raw reality of the situation. You're right. They're going to be an anchor on our ship, and frankly, we aren't sailing our ship with any great speed right now either, but we do seem to be gathering some momentum. It'll be the Europeans trying to slow us down. We need to push them hard.
And let's talk specifically about France here, because, and maybe we can get to Germany if we have enough time, but France, they have deals in place, existing deals with Russia to supply them with military assets, I believe naval assets as well. And of course, we know that President Obama has a pretty good relationship with the French President, Francois Hollande. Will we really know that Europe is serious about this when Hollande says, look, we're not going to go through with that deal with Russia?
That would be an incredibly powerful signal. What you're talking about are two helicopter carriers that they built, they've been paid for, and so they're saying, oh, we can't do it, contractual arrangements. But John, when Pakistan tested a nuclear weapon, they had F-16s in the American pipeline they'd already paid for, and we stopped those. And so it's quite possible for nations to do this. That would be a really great signal.
Yeah, and also, you know, we are also buying Russian helicopters and giving them to the Afghan military as well. Maybe we should stop that. I don't know if that's still taking place. But, you know, also, and then in the United Kingdom, we did hear some very strong language from David Cameron. Are you any more optimistic that some of these economic sanctions that really need to happen, that would really originate in the UK, are going to take place now in the wake of the airline crash?
Yeah, we'll get more than we have and less than we want, John. I think that's the best way to summarize this. That there are a lot of things that can be done. Sanctions, NATO redirecting where it deploys its forces, what we think about the anti-ballistic missile system we've had in place. There are a variety of things now. And John, not just to punish Russia, that's secondary. To deter Russia, and then to prudently respond to the new situation.
Yeah, and of course,
John, the big deal is we're changing the architecture of security.
Yes, and also restore order in Europe. And, you know, as you mentioned before, General, this is what's going to determine the role of Europe in the next era of our lives. So, General Michael Hayden, always great to get your insight on these issues. You have a perspective that not many of us have, or maybe even want, with your insight into the NSA and the CIA. Great to talk to you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Well, as we look at how the world responds to Russia, we're going to check in with an American who's headed over to Gaza to join the IDF there, plus the latest on the international conflicts around the world.